All right, welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a look at a little bit of the navigation and how to access the assigned content. So again, Pronto online chat. You can access it directly through Blackboard. You can download the app through your app store and get it on your phone, which if you're able to do, I highly recommend. It's a great way for us to stay in contact with each other. This is where I will be sending most announcements, occasionally extra credit assignments, so that's an incentive to download it and stay abreast about it. But if you can't, you can access it from any desktop as well. All right, important items. So all quizzes, discussion posts, and replies, and unit exams are due on the day indicated in the course content at 5 p.m. So if you look through the course content, again, this might look different in your course, but anytime you see a date, just know at 5 p.m. that is when the assignment is due. Most assignments, there are no exceptions for late submission. So really do be aware of when things are due. There are some ways of making up points if you happen to miss a deadline, but just to keep things fair for everybody, you in most cases, quizzes, exams, especially exams, will not be extended for any reason whatsoever. Everything is open now, so basically my advice is do not wait until the last minute. Don't wait until the day something is due. Especially since this is an internet class, you need to anticipate technical difficulties, whether it's on your end or on South Texas College's end or Blackboard's end. It's just the nature of the beast. So if you get a hold of me the day before and you're having a technical difficulty, it's probably very possible that we will be able to resolve your issue. If you get a hold of me at 4 o'clock when an exam is about to be due, most likely you're not going to get your issue resolved. So continuing on here, any missed or low scored quiz can be replaced by a unit exam. So that's one example. So if you happen to miss a quiz deadline, this is one way of making it up. For that to happen, though, please make sure you contact me. So in other words, let's say you, for Chapter 1 quiz, you didn't do it. Chapter 2 quiz, you got a 50%. So you went through, you studied, and you took the unit exam, you ended up earning a 95% on the unit exam. Get a hold of me through Pronto, let me know, and I will replace your quiz scores for that unit with your unit exam score. So Chapter 1, which was a 0, will become a 95. The Chapter 2 quiz that you took, all hypothetical, of course, 50%, now becomes a 95%. Students not submitting 2 consecutive assignments and or scoring lower than a 50% per unit are subjected to being withdrawn from the course. It's not an absolute, but you are subjected to being withdrawn from the course. I'll always reach out to you and give you a certain amount of time to get back to me, so we can kind of talk about what's going on. And then, if you might be at a place where you do need to withdraw. So if that's the case, then we'll get you withdrawn. But it also might be an opportunity for us to discuss some of the expectations and how to prepare. Okay, so guidelines for short answers and learning. Yeah, do print this out and read through it carefully. We'll talk more about the specifics of this, but you're going to be submitting discussion posts. There'll be short answer questions on the exam. You don't want to just submit a brief, very vague response when you're writing sentences and paragraphs. So these bullet points, make sure you read through these carefully. They give very specific guidelines on how to garner a the best grade possible from the content. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Lockdown browser, anytime you take a unit exam, including the orientation exam, you have to open up Blackboard through the lockdown browser. So open this up and install the app on your computer so you can take exams going forward. If you have any problems whatsoever, most students don't, but if you do, call Distance Education at 872-2598. If you've never used Respondus lockdown browser and you're unfamiliar with it, I highly recommend watching this. I think it's about a 3-minute video to become familiar with it. But when it does download, it should download to your desktop, and when it does, this is what the application will look like. It'll look like in most cases, it'll look like a padlock. Okay, and then how to do most things. You can just clicking this real quick. This is just basically offers some tutorials on how to do basic applications through Blackboard. So look at that on your own time, especially if you're having trouble or confused about how to, submit an assignment or check your grades or whatever the case may be. Okay, let's go into week 1 real quick. And no matter if you're taking a U.S. History 2 course or a U.S. History 1 course, it is always going to be basically organized in the same way. There's going to be chapters and there's going to be lectures. So if there's a chapter, you want to open it up. It's going to look a little bit different on your end. There will be a study guide available. In U.S. History 2, it looks a little bit different, but you want to look for these prompts right here. In U.S. History 2, they'll be labeled as learning objectives, and they'll be at the above every little section within a chapter. In U.S. History 1, they're above the entire chapter. But nonetheless, regardless of how it's organized for you in your course, what I highly suggest doing is getting a notebook for this course. Get a notebook and handwrite these prompts. And then as you're going through the chapter, going through the text and the videos, handwrite your notes. If you handwrite the prompts, that will sort of prime your mind about, okay, this is what to expect. And then if you handwrite your notes, there's more of a kinetic connection between your hand and your mind, and you'll notice definitely that you'll begin to not necessarily memorize information. That's not what this course is about, but you'll become more familiar to where when you take the exam, it won't be such an angst-ridden event, right? And the other reason why you want to, wait for it, handwrite your notes, is that you are able to use your notes during the unit exams as long as they're handwritten. You cannot use typed notes. And you need to show the webcam when you take the exam, right before you take the exam, you'll be prompted by the exam to show your notes to the camera. And please make sure that they are handwritten. If there is any indication that they are typed, that will be basically deemed as plagiarism and cheating, and you will be removed from the course, or you actually will be giving a failing grade for the course. So do the work and you'll be fine. Again, in doing this, the guidelines come into play here. So let's take a look again at those guidelines. Notice what it says right here. Be sure your responses are 1 to 3 paragraphs. That depends on how much content is available, how you write, and all of that. But if you find yourself only writing 1 to 2 sentences per prompt, that's an indication that you probably need to write more, right? Usually you can get it within 1 to 2 paragraphs. Occasionally it's going to be 3. And then you want to make sure you're being specific. You want to refer specifically to content assigned in the course, right? So primary sources and secondary sources, just to let you know what that means exactly, you can click there. It'll give you a very specific, but a primary source is simply a source that comes from the period in which you're studying from. So in other words, like a newspaper clipping from the Revolutionary War era, so from the 1776, or a law that was passed in Congress in 1812, right? That's a primary source, or a letter, or a journal entry. A secondary source is a lecture from me or just your textbook information, right? So it's secondary to what's going on. It's a narrative spun on the data and the evidence from the historical record. In other words, that's what. But you need to refer specifically to the sources that are provided to you from Blackboard. So keep that in mind. And just go through this. You want to make sure there's dates in your responses. You want to make sure that if it applies, that there's you are referring to geography. So you don't want to just say the Americas. You want to say specifically where in the Americas. Or if you're talking about Europe, you want to talk about specifically within Europe. If you're talking about Africa, you want to say specifically, like Sierra Leone. What are we talking about? West Africa? Be as specific as possible, given what information you're given. So go through that. When in doubt, always go to the last one. Be specific as possible. Okay, so going back to week 1, the other thing you want to keep in mind is after you're done reading a chapter or a lecture. I'll talk about the lectures in a separate video. There'll always be a discussion by depending on your date, but by the first week there'll be a date. Depending on the course that you're in, there'll be a specific date that you're gonna want to be aware of. By then, you'll want to have requested a prompt. You're going to get a prompt from either the chapters or the lecture in which you are going to create a response, and then you're going to respond to a student. So the guidelines basically say if you have not, after posting your response, so your response is going to be 1 to 2 paragraphs, 5 to 6 sentences per paragraph. Respond referring to the assigned content. Using the guidelines that were provided. And after doing so, you want to respond to 1 to 3 students. And what you're doing basically with that is if you see that there could have been further information, you're going to provide that information. You'll also be taking quizzes based primarily on the chapters. And so the guidelines for the quizzes are right there, right? There'll be usually, it'll be either 5 to 10 questions. If it's just one chapter that's assessing, it's going to be 5 questions. If it's 2 chapters, it'll be 10 questions. So true, false, multiple choice, fill in the blank. If it's fill in the blank, the spelling has to be correct. If it's 5 questions, you get 5 minutes. If it's 10 questions, you get 10 minutes. Has to be taken in one setting. No backtracking questions. So, in other words, you can't go back once you've clicked next. In the quiz. 2 attempts are possible. The highest score is recorded. All quizzes are open now, and they cannot be assessed after the deadline. Again, if your unit exam is higher, contact me, and I will replace your quiz score with your unit exam. So if it's higher or you missed it, in other words, there you go. Okay, we'll leave it at that. I want to talk about the lectures in a separate video, and we'll talk about that. So see you in the next video, part 3.